Hello and welcome to News Centre. I'm Parikshit Luthra. Prime Minister Narendra Modi had announced a national hydrogen mission in his independence speech last year. And today, the cabinet gave its approval to the mission with an initial outlay of over 19,700 crore rupees. The aim is to make India a global hub of green hydrogen by boosting production utilization as well as exports. The government plans to spend around 17,000 crore rupees on incentives for manufacturing and 400 crore rupees on developing green hydrogen hubs in India. The government is aiming to increase production capacity of green hydrogen to 5 million metric tons per annum by 2030. Renewable energy capacity will go up to 125 gigawatts. It also expects the mission to attract 8 lakh crore worth of investments and create over 6 lakh jobs in the next 7 years. Among other outcomes, the program will also increase export opportunities for green hydrogen, decarbonize industrial and energy sectors, and reduce India's dependence on import of fossil fuels. Let's listen in to Anurag Thakur, the Minister for I&B, while announcing the green hydrogen mission.
इस मिशन के क्रियान्वयन से भारत को ग्रीन हाइड्रोजन के उत्पादन, उपयोग और निर्यात के लिए एक ग्लोबल हब के रूप में स्थापित किया जाए, इस दृष्टि से काम किया जा रहा है। अब 2020 तक ग्रीन हाइड्रोजन की कुल डिमांड ग्लोबल की जो होगी, हमारा प्रयास है कि हम उसका कम से कम 10% भारत के लिए लाएं।
All right, joining me now to take this forward is Arunabha Ghosh, CEO of the Council on Energy, Environment and Water, Shubranshu Patnaik, partner at Deloitte. Also joining us is Sandeep Kashyap, Chief Operating Officer at the ACME Group. Thank you very much for joining us. We will also be joined by Vineet Mittal of the Avaada Group shortly. But let me begin with Sandeep Kashyap right now. Sandeep Kashyap, how do you see this announcement? Does this give the industry, players like you, enough clarity to make future investments? We believe a lot of enabling schemes will still need to be rolled out by the government, but does this give a clear roadmap for about 10 years?
So in fact, I would say this is a great move from Government of India. This will really help us develop initial projects to the extent of 5 to 6 million metric ton, as is envisaged by 2030. And this will really help Indian developers to look at the export markets. Still time we are able to develop complete supply chain and Indian market for the time being. If you really see the policy, it clearly indicates the initial layout of around 19,700 crores. And India is one of those few countries in the first block itself, wherein we have really put up money on the table for the developers as incentive packages, and especially considering two things. One, we have seen the incentives on the final products, which is the green hydrogen and its derivatives. And one of the key things, which is electrolyzers. And on electrolyzers also, it has been considered a good amount of incentives, which will kickstart, initiatives on local manufacturing of electrolyzers. Apart from this, if you really see most of the things required for producing green hydrogen or its derivatives, almost 70% of the materials are being produced in India. So a very comprehensive policy, I would say. Details will come up. The process initiated by Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, engaging all the ministries, relevant ministries, as well as stakeholders. It was a complete consultative process, and we hope we will have a very detailed policy coming out very soon.
Right. Shubranshu Patnaik, now that this financial outlay structure has been laid out by the cabinet, approved by the cabinet, will it now have to be up to the private sector to make those investments when it comes to transitioning to green hydrogen as a fuel for manufacturing? What do you think the demand will be for green hydrogen as a fuel for manufacturing setups across the country?
Thanks, Parikshit, for having me, first of all. I think, as far as green hydrogen is concerned, there is, as you'd hear from everyone else, there is a cost cap, right? Green hydrogen comes at almost twice the cost of hydrogen, the normal hydrogen that we produce from natural gas or other fossil fuel-based sources. So this effort is actually to try and create a bridging mechanism whereby with scale, with investments, we bring down the cost to the levels of blue hydrogen and such, right? So effectively, the demand has to be also obligated to start with. That is also hopefully the part of the details that come out shortly, which is that some of the industrial segments, whether it is refineries or fertilizers and such, would be obligated to buy some of the green hydrogen that some of the part of the hydrogen that they consume from greener sources, right? And that would jumpstart the virtuous cycle of creating a demand good enough in Indian terms to make manufacturers or producers then come into the equation. So that's the overall way in which it's being approached. So yes, it is. It provides some clarity from the production side in terms of lining up, incentives for production itself and for manufacturing. But we'll have to see the details around how the demand is also getting created from an Indian perspective.
All right, we will have to see how the demand is getting created. But let me go across to Arunabha Ghosh. Arunabha, CEEW had worked very closely with the government on the green hydrogen mission. The aim with this plan that has been approved by the cabinet today is to develop green hydrogen production capacity of at least 5 million metric ton per annum, and with an increased renewable energy capacity addition of about 125 gigawatt in the country. This is the plan till 2030. How realistic is this, and what kind of mandates will have to come in order to make the industry, different industrial sectors, transition to green hydrogen?
Parikshit, first of all, we have to understand that how does the Indian mission stand in comparison to various other countries? We at CEEW have looked at about 38 different countries, including the European Union, that have missions around our national programs around hydrogen or green hydrogen. And I can say that India's mission, as announced today, is the largest of its kind anywhere in the world. It is our targets of 5 million tons per annum by 2030, is half of the entire EU's domestic production target and larger than any major economy standalone. So it is a hugely ambitious mission, and the government should be congratulated for it. Now, to convert that ambition into reality, of course, we need to also have the demand side creation. And that's why the critical sectors, particularly fertilizer, the use sectors, which are petrochemicals, fertilizers, steel, these are the sectors where we will need to create that demand, that offtake for all this green hydrogen that's going to be produced. And for that, this new site fund that has been announced, the strategic interventions for green hydrogen technologies and transition, that is going to be critical because it helps to provide what is called sort of a viability gap to nudge these demand side industries to start covering for the gap in costs and offering a much larger market that India can do. Because when we do that, then industry also comes forward on the supply side with much more investment to build out that capacity, build out the over 100 gigawatts of renewables capacity, build out the more than 40 gigawatts of electrolyzer capacity that will be needed to manufacture the green hydrogen. So it has to be a supply side push, a demand side pull, but also driven by an ambition that's set out by the government, but will be fulfilled by the private sector.
All right. Sandeep Kashyap, if I can get you in once again. We heard from our sources in the government that PLI schemes will likely be rolled out in order to operationalize incentives for electrolyzers and green hydrogen generation under the National Green Hydrogen Mission. The outlay for green hydrogen will be 13,000 crores and about 4,500 crores for electrolyzer manufacturing. The upper cap when it comes to electrolyzers, the incentives would be rupees 4,539 per kilowatt hour with a 15 to 20% incentive on production costs, which will be tapering annually. This will be for 5 years. The aim is to have 3 gigawatt capacity. When it comes to green hydrogen, the incentive could be rupees 50 per kg, 20% of the production cost tapering annually. So how do you think these incentives could augur for the industry?
Parikshit, if you see, what the way we see it, these incentives will really kickstart the whole process. This will be useful in terms of making India competitive for the export markets as far as final product is concerned, in terms of green hydrogen or its derivatives, 50 rupees per kg when you mentioned. So that is a kind of difference we see clearly. Vis-a-vis some of the countries, we have that kind of a disadvantage which has been covered in the mission. And we also believe that over a period of time, once we achieve scale and volumes by 2030, we should be able to compete in the global market without any incentives. Or if at that point in time we still would need some incentives, I think we can approach government for the same. As far as electrolyzers is concerned, these are not being manufactured much in India till now, and even companies are working on putting up capacities. They were all looking at these incentives. So as I said, this is a kickstart, and this will give an initial impetus in terms of setting up manufacturing base in India for the first few projects. And likewise, once we have the scale and volume in place with the Indian demand picking up, clubbed with the export demand, we believe by 2030 and beyond that, we should be able to compete on our own in the international market as well.
Right. Shubranshu Patnaik, what are the other measures do you feel the government will have to take? There is, of course, an allocation for R&D. There is an allocation for infrastructure, transportation, development under the National Green Hydrogen Mission. But what are some of the other enabling frameworks that the government will have to come up with in order to make sure that there is demand and the green hydrogen setup really takes off? And realistically speaking, what is the current quantum of electrolyzer manufacturing in India and green hydrogen generation capacity that we have right now?
Right. So currently, hardly any, as Sandeep rightly pointed out, there's hardly any electrolyzer manufacturing capacity. Mind you, the electrolyzers requirement were also modest and smaller in capacity as far as sizes are concerned. What we're talking of is a quantum jump. So therefore, it's a different scale altogether that we are discussing as of now. And there was obviously no green hydrogen. Hydrogen was produced from natural gas, so it was all blue and other shades in between, but definitely not green. So we are looking at green hydrogen in a different light altogether. Now, what else is required? I think a couple of other things. Mind you, this is just the beginning, as Sandeep and Arunabha have also been stressing on. This is essentially putting the building blocks for positioning India favorably in terms of a policy regime which the private sector can benefit from. But the user industries that exist today, where specifically consuming hydrogen, not necessarily green hydrogen, you would require green hydrogen as a transitioning mechanism, as an energy transition mechanism for hard-to-abate sectors and for long-haul transportation as you move ahead, right? That also is a hard-to-abate segment. Now, making that transition in the industries itself, basically making sure that those industries also transit, whether it is steel, whether it is cement, long-haul transportation, which will be a major user of hydrogen going forward, shipping, aviation, all of that. This is part of a global market, right? And India will be a producer economy as far as some of these manufacturing segments are concerned, industrial segments are concerned. So it is important that we continue to have transition effected properly, right? And that is the focus of the government of India, which is they recognize that green hydrogen is a means for decarbonizing the economy itself, right? And particularly in the hard-to-abate segment. So there are measures that need to be taken from a user segment perspective also, which is how do you transition these respective industry segments to adopt green hydrogen. That would be one of the focus areas. But there are other smaller issues also to be addressed. For instance, there is the talk about exports. So how do you look at export-related taxes, its waivers, and if there are issues around export infrastructure, which there will be, obviously, the creation of ports, the creation of logistical networks, and so on and so forth. How do you make sure that those also benefit from right kind of incentives and fiscal incentives and tax waivers would also be a focus as we go forward.
Right.
But this is a very, very good beginning. And as Arunabha said, if you compare globally, it just pitchforks India into the regime of the top 3 in terms of having an attractive hydrogen policy and the scale that we have presented globally.
Okay, Arunabha, to get you in, what would be the best way to operationalize and get a bang for the buck, so to say? We are hearing that the government will be inviting bids both for electrolyzer manufacturing and green hydrogen manufacturing from companies who are interested. There could be a PLI-like scheme. Do you think that's the best way to move forward for this?
There are 2 aspects to this, Parikshit. One is, of course, the PLI scheme, which is for the manufacturing of the electrolyzers. And even there, we should make sure that it is not just an assembly of electrolyzers. We've got to actually manufacture the high-value parts of the electrolyzers, the membranes, etc. Use the PLI scheme as a incentive for the industry to innovate and create value at home, not just assemble products that have been made elsewhere. That really is strategic industrial policy. Otherwise, we'll be back to a very basic level of manufacturing. That's one aspect. But the other aspect is actually how do you incentivize the demand side? And that's where other types of incentives, the viability gap funding kind of approach is needed to kickstart a market. But over time, we should be looking at green ammonia purchase obligations, creating, again, reverse auctions when the market is mature enough to keep using the competition in the market to drive down prices. And then most importantly, I would say, to really get bang for the buck, we've got to play in the global market. And you can't do that if India does not take the lead with like-minded countries to set the rules for a fair trade of green hydrogen in the global economy. Otherwise, larger economies are going to create protectionist regimes, whether in Europe or in the United States or elsewhere, which will make it difficult for us to access those markets. So India should not just look at its domestic market, but leverage the private sector capacity that we have here to start looking at the rules, standards, certifications, safety protocols, transport systems, etc., that create a rules-based architecture for a fair, energy-secure global green hydrogen economy.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us, Arunabha. Also, Mr. Kashyap and Shubranshu Patnaik here on News Center, giving us your view on the green hydrogen ecosystem in the country and your reactions on the National Green Hydrogen Mission and what's the best way to move forward now that this financial framework has been announced by the government. We're going to take a short break, but don't go anywhere. We will get you a special report when we're back. All right, time now to focus on a CNBC-TV18 special initiative, a year-long campaign called Future Female Forward. Gender diversity, female-centric policies, pay parity, conversations around these issues are increasingly becoming commonplace in boardrooms across India. But the Anand Group, one of India's oldest organizations, is among the few that's turning these conversations into actions. As part of our ongoing campaign, Future Female Forward, a women's collective, CNBC-TV18's Danish Anand, says the 21-company group is going beyond just providing women with job opportunities. It's enabling them to push forward with upskilling programs as well.
At the Anand Group, gender equality and women empowerment are not just catchphrases bandied about in the boardroom. Here, women have been playing an integral role since its inception over 6 decades ago. And women can be found in operational, executive and leadership roles at both the corporate offices and on the factory floor. Here at the group's Cable factory in Khansa, women are encouraged and entrusted with jobs that were once considered the exclusive domain of men, and they contribute shoulder to shoulder in every aspect of manufacturing shop absorbers. These components are supplied not just to Indian OEMs but to global players as well. Executive Chairperson Anjali Singh says nurturing female employees at every level in the group has been in the company's DNA since day one.
We at Anand today have 17% of women across our organization, 21% on the shop floor, which, as you can tell, is the larger chunk on the shop floor itself. That's where the drive started from almost 6 decades ago. They are largely ladies that are diploma engineers. They are skilled, and we further upskill them into jobs going into being supervisors, and beyond that into plant managers and into operation heads positions.
But gender diversity does not mean gender appeasement. At the 21 company strong group, diversity and inclusiveness go hand in hand, and equal attention and importance is given to training and upskilling both male and female employees. Nothing is ad hoc.
We have something called the Anand Talent Program and the Anand Development Leadership Program, which gives them all kinds of inputs on both aptitude and on leadership training and maybe even job rotation to help them really have a plethora of experiences that then make them into leaders for tomorrow.
The Anand Group's success in achievement of a strong diversity quotient is not an accident. Over 6 decades, the group has actively ensured that women employees are afforded various facilities to be able to contribute better. Policies have been tweaked to this end, and management has been attentive to providing women employees a safe working environment. Female employees also get access to benefits like transportation, hostels for accommodation, wholesome food and daycare facilities. All part of a long-term strategy that is constantly being strengthened to last for the longer term.
Some of the very normal ways of making a secure and happy workplace for ladies is to look at, of course, the policies around their living, places to stay, which are just all for ladies. And then we have also made sure that we give them transportation to the company, so security, whether they're in the first shift or second shift, they have the security coming to office. Of course, creches, of course, there is, the many good practices today, like making sure that they have paid leave during maternity and so on. And, I think ladies are terribly good at multitasking. They can do it all.
And so, it is no accident either that female employees have a strong presence across operational levels at Gable Factory, from critical roles like Head of Environment Safety Health and group leaders to even trainee and ancillary roles. For the employees here, this is normal.
It is a challenging job, but the amount of cooperation and support that I get from the management and my colleagues is amazing, and it makes my job easier for me.
I am working as a team leader, and I attended 35 people, including boys and girls, and all seniors and juniors are really supportive for me.
हमें support भी बहुत करते हैं यहाँ पे, हमारे seniors हो, juniors हो. I feel comfortable because nobody says anything else. जिससे कि बुरा लगे या कुछ भी disappointed हो जाए, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है.
But at the Anand Group, the work for gender equality and diversity is far from over. The management is constantly working on reviewing and reworking its policies, gearing them towards employee friendliness and making them catalysts for inclusive growth. The learning process is continuous, and the group says this has been a big reason for its sustained growth momentum and continued success.
For the growth of any country, equal participation of men and women in the workforce is very important. If India wants to grow faster, it needs to ensure that more and more women are involved in the workforce, because according to World Bank's latest estimates, the involvement of women in the workforce in India is one of the lowest in the world. And if India wants to grow faster, and if India wants to be one of the top economies, it needs to ensure that more and more things are done on this end. With video journalist Nitin Trivedi, this is Danish Anand for CNBC-TV18.
All right, so that was Danish's report on the Anand Group for our series Future Female Forward. Tune in for more special reports for our special campaign. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of News Center. Don't go anywhere. News continues on CNBC-TV18.